There's quite a few different ways of generating geometry from splines within Cinema 4D, but before we have a look at that, let's just have a quick look at one of the alternative methods of generating a kind of render result. And what we can do, if you have the module, is we can use Sketch and Toon. So I'm just going to come to the Material Manager and choose File, Sketch Material. And now if we render, you can see that all that's happening is our floor object is being displayed. So first of all, let's switch to the layer browser, unhide our scene elements and inner manager, and let's just switch off our disk floor. Let's also hide the background for a moment. Now if we render, we're just getting a pure white render. So if we click to open our render settings and come down to Sketch and Toon, switch to the shading tab, background is color white, so that's why we're getting a white render. If we switch to the lines tab, however, we have the option in here to render splines. If you don't see all of these options, come to the main tab and make sure that your control level is set to advanced. Now switch back to the lines tab and enable splines. If we close this and hit render, you can see that now Sketch and Toon is taking our splines as an input and it's using those to generate the lines. So we can select our sketch material, switch to the Attributes Manager, again select the main tab and make sure your control level is set to advanced. Once we've done this, we can do things such as adjust the color, the thickness, the opacity. Because we're working with splines, this means that we can use the stroke options without any problems at all with Sketch and Toon. Often when you work with polygons and edges, using strokes can cause quite a lot of flicker in animation. But because you're working with splines, the stroke is always going to be based along the length of the spline. So if first of all we enable the strokes option, when we come to things like opacity, we can enable a long stroke. And if we render now, you can see that what happens is our sketch fades along the spline. At the moment it seems to be fading the wrong way, but what we can do is we can either choose invert here within our sketch material, or if we come back to our tracer object, we have the option at the bottom here to reverse sequence. If we check reverse sequence and hit render, you can see that now our sketch is fading along the length of our spline. Select the sketch material again to come back to here. At the moment our color is set to black, but if we choose color along stroke, we have the option to map a gradient over the top of this black, or whichever color we've already picked. Because we've used black, choosing add seems to make sense. Let's just fold this down, select the first knot of our gradient, and let's make this red. Let's select the second knot and let's just make this blue. Now if we render, not only does it fade out, but the stroke travels from red to blue. So we're already getting quite a funky result. And of course we can do the same with thickness, and we can choose a long stroke again. If we set the thickness up to 3 or 4, render, you can see that now our stroke starts quite thick, fades out with the opacity, the color changes, and the thickness of the stroke. Of course you can always come to the main tab, and in here we have a huge number of presets, and you can pick one of those, and such as the watercolor light, which is a preset I generated when the sketch was being developed, and you can use something like that, and you can then go through and adjust the parameters so that it fits the kind of project that you're working with. So hopefully just by using this basic principle with FBX files and then using Sketch and Toon with your splines, you can already see a huge amount of potential. I'm not going to spend any longer on the sketch module, just in case some of you don't have this, and we're going to come back to working with the tracer, and let's look at a few different methods we have of creating geometry. Before I do that, I'm going to save this out, and I'm just going to delete the sketch material and the sketch settings from my render settings.